activity to bring us together. We all come from other events in the building, and it's not on my mind that you probably had a long day. The schedule was different. That's always throwing things off. So thank you. Thanks for being here. Today we're going to talk about the power of storytelling. And I have you in circles because we are going to be sharing stories. We have some papers on the way for you. But before we get into that, the power of stories. Stories are important because when we tell our narrative, we allow ourselves to listen and invite other people's narratives in. I'm listening, I've said all day, to Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. It's a fantastic book if you've not read it. And I know the science behind listening to stories. When you listen to a character's story, you actually release oxytocin in your brain. And oxytocin is a hormone that then calls you to stay, to be present with that story. So whether I'm sitting and I'm hearing your story or I'm listening to Trevor Noah's story on audiobook, because I'm listening and participating in that story, I want to be with it. Even more powerful when we are sitting face to face to release those chemicals and engage in conversation with one another. The power of stories allows us to have a common purpose, common goals, and common values. So what we're going to do to start, you're going to be getting a packet, and at the top of it, I want you to write down 4 or 5 of your core beliefs, core values. And this is a quiet reflection, your top 4 or 5, just at the top of this paper. It's coming.
I'm not sure there are going to be enough. It appears that one packet has 2 sets. So I'm just not sure. So if there aren't enough, you can break
Split them.
Here's one.
I see people problem solving. Nice job. Here's one. Anybody have extras? Thanks. Here we go. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Extra? Thanks. Thank you.
And they're nice and
Good observation.
well, it looks like we would have had enough too, maybe, but
Perfect.
it wasn't looking that way to me at first. It wasn't looking like we were going to have enough.
Oh, right here. Anybody need one? Raise your hand. All right, so at the top of this paper, write down some of your core beliefs, core values, just a single word. In the front pocket of mine, I have pens. All right, so we've established some of our core beliefs. You're not born with these beliefs. And sometimes, without telling a story, we can go into a space and we assume the people around us share those same beliefs or those same values. And so today we're going to do an exercise and activity where we share our narrative. And so what you're going to do is you're going to think of a story of self. It's really important to know that you are not writing your life story. We all, each of us, have many stories. So you're going to choose one story, and you're going to identify a challenge that you've had in your life. And you can go personal or you can go professional, today, 10 years, this is up to you. A challenge that you've had, a choice that you made because of that challenge, and the outcome. These are all ingredients for a good plot. Another brain fact, as you are listening to stories, as the story climaxes and arcs, your brain releases cortisol in anticipation of figuring out that story, no matter what the story is. So again, the brain loves stories. So what I want you to do is flip your worksheet over to the back. There's a graphic organizer and some stipulations. When we're done with our story, we're going to share. We're going to share around our table with some partners. Your story shouldn't be more than 2 to 3 minutes in length when you share. You do not have to write a grammatically correct story, so you don't need to write in paragraphs. If you want to write in paragraphs, you can. If you want to write a poem, if you want to draw pictures, bullet points, whatever is best for you, that's how you're going to use that graphic organizer. But it is important that you stick to the parts of challenge, choice, and how you overcame that. And when we're done, we're going to come together and get in smaller groups, and we're going to share our stories, and we're going to talk about this. So right now, you're going to take about 10 minutes, and we're going to respectfully be quiet so that we can go in and focus on our story of self. I'm going to write a story. Sandy's been writing stories. So all of us are going to take this time to write a story. Do you have any questions? So right now, we're just focusing.
Because my question is, I mean, there's things that have changed your life, but I may not want to share. Is this something you would do with your kids? Like if they were to write about a person, would they not have to share?
So we're going to talk about how we connected to kids. So you absolutely could do story of self with students. You could put some parameters around it, but I want us to work through the activity to see our journey and progression to get there for that reflection. Any other questions?
Do we have to physically write out the story?
You can just write bullet points. Yep, it's whatever you're comfortable with. All right, we're going to start on our story of self. You've got about 9 minutes to get that done.
I'm gonna see if I can get you hooked up. Boom, thank you.
I want you to pause for just a second. I want you to notice how you're feeling right now. Tag an emotion to it. And however you're feeling is okay. It's okay. You are in control. You choose what story you get to share right now. But I want you to be in connection with how you're feeling right now. And notice if that changes as we work through this. So again, I invite us to settle in and write your personal story. We've got about 7 minutes. about 3 minutes. If you are finished, I challenge you to think about how you're going to share your story, remembering that we have about 2 to 3 minutes per person. So maybe practice that in your head while you wait. We have about a minute to finish up our story. Go ahead and finish up. So there's power in sharing our stories. And what we're going to do over the next 15 minutes or so, 15 to 20, is we're going to take time to share our story with 3 to 4 people around us. What are some norms? What are some norms we need for listening to these stories and honoring these stories? What do you need? Eye contact. Thank you. No judgment. Be open-minded. Validation. Trust. Respectful. Honoring that we want to hear from everyone. As you listen to the stories, I want us to genuinely connect. So after each person has shared their story, if you have a question, a connection, or have conversation around that, authentically, genuinely do that before you move on to the next one. It's not just a boom, 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 and we're done. Have conversation. We're human. We're wired to connect. We're going to talk about, I'm going to pause you about halfway through just for you to notice how you're feeling. And then we're going to continue. So when I stop you in the middle, don't worry that you're done. Your time is up because your time is not up. Are there questions about sharing? We'll be around, Sandy and I, popping in and listening if everybody's comfortable with that as you're sharing as well. So go ahead. I invite you to listen and share your stories with those around you. Get started. Perfect.
Reiterate that it's with 3 or 4 people, because otherwise.
Perfect. I just got good feedback, so I just want to reiterate 3, 2, 1. You're not sharing the whole table, maybe down the middle. So 1/2, 3 to 4 people sharing stories, not the whole table. Thanks. And if, you do want to move, that's fine, to a different spot.
Really hard for me to listen at the table. There's no way I could do that.
May I say?
As part of the challenge, I was thinking to myself, like, I could just stay home or I could go back in January. And my choice was, like, I just need to do it, and I didn't go back to work after fall break. And so the outcome is still a little bit undecided, but so far it's been good. It's caused me to like come up with new routines and like extra responsibilities, which has been a good thing. But ultimately, like I feel like I have a greater purpose that I can make a difference here and at home. But we'll see how the story ends.
Did you have a child?
Yeah,
Is that what
I had a baby in June.
Okay.
This is my second week back to work, so that was kind of my challenge of figuring out the new school.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you have children? You too?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have 4 kids.
I have 2. So it continues my challenge.
I think it got harder each time.
Yeah, that's
Just-
everyone was like, after the second one, it was so easy. It's easier to leave them out. Like, I feel like it's going to get harder every time.
I had a hard time. This time it was with Isla was really, and I had 5 months with her, and so it was difficult to go back. And it took me longer to get into my swing and like get my brain. I still don't have my brain. I don't feel like.
Some days I feel like I wasn't like a good teacher or a good parent. You know, I was just kind of that rock,
Figuring out that joke. Yeah.
back and forth. But I had to come back. I had to come,
Yeah.
my kids are 33, 36. They made very easy.
Yep. Did you have? What was your outcome? What'd you say your outcome
I
was?
just said, like, new routines, but I've been forced to find a balance, which is, it's good to be busier for me. It makes me more organized. It gives me, like, a greater purpose. Like I can do both. Like, can be a good teacher here and also, like, still spend time. It's hard.
But the same outcome was no matter how much I
Especially coming
trained,
in at,
still
like, this
enjoyment.
point in the year, where, like,
Yeah.
kids already
Doesn't
have
matter
some
time.
routines, but a lot of things I want to change, and so, like, trying to change that without, like, rocking their
A little bit
world too
different than other
much.
racing.
Yes.
So it's maybe a springtime baby next time. It's
We always say that, don't we? Like, it'll always. I'm always like, I'll not be busy in November or next, but it's just
And it's different
things
terrain
are hard
these days,
sometimes.
so
It's just
between 5 and
always
7
juggling and always
One time it was on
learning
ski
and
slope,
figuring it out. I don't know that it gets easier.
the ski slope, and then you
Just get better.
You surprise yourself.
You do. I have learned. I feel like.
It's easier. It's just
use a lot of the same
Yeah.
some of them
we don't have the tolerance of when babies don't
No, you get other problems with older kids.
Yeah, which is scary too. Yeah.
Georgia next year doing
Good. Thanks for letting me drop in.
No problem.
Thanks. May I sit? May I sit? Is that okay? Hi.
So, no, you're good. So no, I'm glad that I'm glad that you're doing it. It always stinks that it's something that takes like something. Get water.
You're fine. You're fine.
Did you feel like it's sitting?
Is anyone sitting here?
I don't think so. Empowered at the same time, chair. But I got married a little older, I was 31, and had this idea of, to be married a few years before we decided to have kids. And then about 33-ish, started to try and of course struggled and went through all the books and all the crazy things and finally got pregnant and soon after miscarried. And at this point, about 35-ish, at the time, and thinking we were always going to have 2 children and it's all going to be lovely, and just that undying guilt and struggle and through that challenge of not being able to have a baby. And so through the choice was even kind of a challenge because I struggled with like the guilt of why I couldn't get pregnant, because of my faith kind of questioning and is this supposed to be the way it is and I shouldn't go into any other steps, and even the expense of fertility, just knowing the possibility of knowing that we didn't have the money to really go down this path, but we decided it was something that we wanted to do, so we went and met with people at Midwest Fertility. The outcome is that I have an awesome 11-year-old right now. We did get pregnant pretty soon after. Through insurance and the amazing things that happened, the cost was very limited for us. Had her pretty quick, and even though I always had this idea of those 2 kiddos, that sibling, once we had her, there was not a want anymore. It was just very much like we were perfectly satisfied with our little family of 3, and anyway, so.
She's 11.
She's 11 now, yes.
That's
My
great.
little mini me, which sometimes I remind myself how excited I am to be.
Yes, it's a good reflection. Like, yeah, it's really good. Yes. It's a good reminder. Fertility came really easy to me, and it's just, again, assuming that it's not that way for everybody, and another reminder to look at my kids and be like really thankful for the before too. Yeah.
And I would say as a teacher too, I remember prior there were times I'd be like, oh, well, you know, it's because he's an only child. Like I was like as a teacher, even that mentality, some of those stereotypical things, and so then looking through a lens of a parent of an only, like that's been, I think that's helped in the classroom too.
Yeah.
I think I'd be just a totally different teacher as a parent.
Oh, for sure.
Like all the separation, like all of the things that come along with that. It's just made me totally different.
I went into early childhood because I went through it as a parent. Didn't realize it. Then I sat at the table, special ed from all of the angles, except for the paper. And then being as a parent was what made it a pleasant thing. Finally signed in at the case conference on that line.
Absolutely.
When you sit at one of the case conferences and you think about that other piece, how I didn't think about that before.
With every, yeah.
Just like I was just thinking, we're doing the best. Like, of course you should be thankful. Like we're doing what you're, and then to be on that other side is different.
I think it's really, not always, but when you say that, like it's easy to have expectations of yourself and walk the walk, but then and talk the talk. But when you have kids on the line, like that becomes for real. Like, do I believe in the work I do? Do I believe in what I'm saying? Is this what I'm spending my time? Because would I do that with my kids? And yeah.
And like you said, a lot of times from a teacher perspective, we're like, oh, thank God this child's going to get this, you know, rich help they need, this resource help they need. But on the other side, that parent now is like, now I have that label of having a special needs child, and what is that going to mean for me going forward? And just very different perspectives.
Like to sit at a parent conference as a parent.
Yeah.
After being a teacher for a long time, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a lot more nervous than I am on the other side.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure.
I just want to be reassured that the words of affirmation that you're doing all right, you're doing good.
Thanks for letting me sit. I'm intrigued by your pictures. I'm going to ask you to just pause for a second. And as we pause, I just want you to notice, how are you feeling? Is it different than you were feeling about 7 minutes ago at the start? Is it the same? If it's the same, is there any adjustments we could make? Is there anything you need? But be reflective. Also letting you know we have about 5 minutes, so we want, again, honoring that we want to hear from everybody. Make sure that we hear from everybody in these last couple of minutes. Nice job. Go ahead. May I sit and talk? Sorry. May I interject myself into the circle? Great.
We just
I'm just
followed them
listening.
sharing. We kind of were just chatting.
Awesome. Did anybody, any connections or themes or things you talked about in more depth?
Just like job changes, like things like that, going back to work when you have kids and stuff like that. Kind of a theme.
Do you guys all have kids?
Nope.
Yes, no.
So I couldn't relate to like any others. Kids. Change of career after 20-some years. So yeah.
Even in those, though, without having kids, were you able to connect to their stories at all? Or
I
even,
can totally see where they're coming from.
yeah.
I
like I can totally, if I put myself in their shoes and I told them, like, I don't know how people with kids can teach and go home and do it all the same. So, like, I can totally understand where each of them coming from and all of that. But yeah, just like, I haven't personally experienced that yet.
Right.
But yeah.
Nice. Good.
Kudos to all you.
Good. Awesome. Thanks for letting me sit and chat for a second.
Yeah.
Build the house up and have it build memories instead.
It's kind of like,
Nate was the first day you
I got you, like, don't worry about the small stuff kind of thing. Like, yeah, you need to get your right, and you chose something that was going to be.
Yeah. Made everybody happy.
Yeah. And you still remember it.
They all remember it. So it's so cute when they bring up the conversations. Oh, remember in the Bahamas? I don't go to the Bahamas.
What did Cassie choose?
Cassie went to Colorado, and those also were amazing memories. So she's like, I don't want to go on a cruise like my brother. I want to go to the mountains. So we actually went went four-wheeling up to the Continental Divide with her. And it was in July. And once we got to the Continental Divide, it snowed. And it was like this, I could tear up now. Like it was just a magical scene. Yeah. So we'll see where part of them
Don't remember anything about the house.
No.
And even if you change it, they wouldn't.
I'm going to bring us back together in 1 minute. If we could come back together in 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thanks so much. So I have some noticings from around the room from your sharing, but what reflection do you have? Reflection from listening, hearing, talking, sharing, emotions. A lot of you were smiling around the room as you listened, I noticed.
And
Thanks.
connections, like, you would hear a story and we could make connections with each other and listening.
And did it have to be the same story? Yeah, able to make those connections and bridge those experiences through our own. Great, thank you. I noticed a lot of us leaning in, not a lot of leaning out, so our body language. I noticed this group did a really nice job with technology, so there wasn't a lot of distraction. We put our things away and we focused on that face-to-face, and that made a big difference also. Little things like head nods, yes, asking those questions once someone finished their story, validating and sharing our experiences also. Any other noticings? I'm going to ask, anybody at the beginning maybe felt like, wow, I really don't want to do this. I'm not in the mood. Anybody change throughout? Anybody wanting to share? That's okay.
Oh, you mean I'll share. At the beginning, I just, at first, immediately went to those negative things in our mind that we could share as maybe helpful to others. And I'm like, I don't want to share. I mean, anxious, very anxious. A couple of us got hot at the table. We were like, oh my gosh, I got 7 minutes to write.
that pressure at first.
Right.
And I can feel it now, like so like, but afterward it was great. We got to hear a lot of great stories from everybody. We laughed a lot, we shared a lot, and made a lot of connections that we didn't know about each other.
Good. Was it helpful in moving to, how many of you are sitting around people that you don't always talk to? I did this intentionally because some of us then may have checked out at the beginning like, oh, I know these people really well. And even today, in every building that I've been, if they sat with people they know or they sat with new people, they learned something new. And it can be dangerous if we walk into a space and we make the assumption that everybody has the same values and beliefs that we do. So what I want you to discuss around your whole table right now is I want you to talk about what is the value of bearing witness to someone's story, and could there be value in doing story of self with your students? So the value of listening and bearing witness to someone's story, and could the value be of doing this with your students? You got a few minutes to discuss at your table.
Stay on task.
It would be beneficial kid to kid.
Have you seen it's on social media, and it's this little story about this teacher that brought all of her kids in the very first week and had them write down, like, what is something
Sorry.
huge challenge that you wish people knew, but they don't. And they wrote it on a piece of paper, and they crumpled it up, and they put it in a trash bag. And then they all sit in community circle, and they pass that trash bag around and randomly pull out one and open it and read it. And no one identifies with it. But it's an opportunity for you to understand and for students to understand these are all the challenges that everyone in this classroom is going through. And you might not have thought Kara has the example. Kara has the perfect life. She's this popular. Everything's perfect. And then if I'm a student who's low income and my parents are getting divorced and my brother just died of cancer, you start to realize, like, we all have challenges, we all have struggles, and I think when we open ourselves up to that vulnerability, it allows us to make connections with people that we might not have thought we were going to connect with. It's pretty powerful.
Really powerful.
Respectful of their story, know their story, but they don't necessarily have to express their story to the entire class. Maybe you just have a one-on-one conversation. I feel like you have to know your students' stories first before you do some sort of activity. I don't know if I would do that with my class as a whole class this year. Ryan will be graduating. I'm ready to go. Then start looking. I haven't left yet. It was just, I wanted them to learn how to make eye contact and respond with whatever.
One minute. if we could come back together in 3, 2, 1. I think it's important just to always, as a facilitator, and all of us being human, it's a great opportunity when students and your students to observe and just watch you. And if you were my class, I would know, and I think sometimes we forget that when we do this work, we're talking about ourselves too. We're not just talking about our students, or we're not just talking about people who've faced adversities. We're talking about all of us. And so even in this space, I would know where my next steps would be. I know who I would connect with based off body language, willingness. There are people in this room that I want to connect with. And I think that's really important that we think about. This work is us. So what were you thinking around bearing witness? What's the value in that? And is this something, what could be the value of doing this with your students? Comments? What'd you guys talk about? Yeah.
We said it could help build empathy among students because they might not realize like what somebody else is going through or has gone through until they give them a chance to share their story.
So building of empathy, absolutely, among your students, peer to peer.
Making it not just like a classroom, but like a family or a team, so they feel like they can come in every day and have multiple people, not just one person.
Absolutely. This came out at West, and it's really important that sometimes when we think about building relationships, we really focus that it's like me with the students, but this promotes peer-to-peer relationship and understanding and empowers students to take action among themselves as well, which is really important. Yes.
In order to learn, you have to create that safe community first, and then they are open to learning other things if they don't feel safe and connected first and learn.
Absolutely. It's what we've spent the last year talking about. If we're not regulated in the lower regions of our brain, and if we are not connected in the limbic emotional part of our brain, then learning is very difficult. But if you invite me into a space where my story matters, I am willing to participate. I am willing to take risks. And it's really important. We also think about whose story are we missing? From our SPED lens, from our ENL lens. How could we translate this and make sure we're hearing from everyone? Everyone has a seat at the table to tell their story. Because we can get in trouble if we assume that those values that we wrote at the top of our page, that everybody shares those and everybody should. And I want to be really clear when we do this, it's not to say that those values that we wrote down at the top of our paper are the most important. They're the most important to us. We weren't born with them. We have experiences that have led us to those. And your kids have values that matter to them because of experiences. All behavior is communication. Any reflection, last minute comments? You're pointing to her, she's pointing to you.
That's timely for me, actually. I think that empathy also builds tolerance. I'm just thinking of a couple of my friends that others are not tolerating at the moment, and if they knew what else was going on in their lives, they would be able to take that with a grain of salt and be a little more tolerant of behaviors and willing to go an extra mile for them and do things for them.
Building up those resiliency pieces, absolutely. And you can scaffold and you can get there. And, you know, I'm willing to share when you are doing the morning meetings and the mindfulness and taking time to value me, I am more willing. And like we said in the beginning, it's not like this story today was your one story of self. We have many stories. You could do this one time a quarter. And if you do it and it's predictable and something that we do in our room, what could those stories transform to be? Or if you did it as a staff, where could that go? Unifying, bringing you together. I appreciate your willingness to go inward. This afternoon, after a day of teaching, it's different to do this with teachers who've been with students all day. I feel that thermostat, and that's okay. It was good. I hope that you guys have something, if to bring your staff together, to maybe explore more and more time among each other, maybe sitting with different people around the table, but possibly a tool, a next step for your students as well. Thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. I look forward, I'll see you second semester at some point as well. Thank you. Thanks.